Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to be talking about something today that could have hit your wallet pretty hard.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept.
The External Revenue Service.
Huh?
Not the IRS.
Right.
A whole new concept.
A whole new idea.
So this External Revenue Service was floated during Trump's presidency as a way to collect revenue from tariffs and duties.
And other things too.
And other sources tied to international trade.
Exactly.
The goal being to shift some of the tax burden away from American citizens' income.
Onto these external streams.
Okay, so that's a big shift.
It is.
We all know the U.S. relies very heavily on income tax.
Right.
Right. That funds everything.
It's the backbone. Yeah.
So this External Revenue Service was meant to tap into a different well.
That's right.
Tariffs.
Yes.
But how would that work?
Okay.
On a practical level.
So think of tariffs as taxes specifically on imported goods.
Okay.
Make those foreign products more pricey, encouraging people to buy American-made alternatives.
So on the surface, it sounds like it's a win-win.
Yeah.
But doesn't that mean we end up paying more?
That's right.
For everyday items?
Uh-huh.
Groceries, clothes, electronics. I mean, a lot of what we buy either comes from overseas or uses imported parts.
Yeah.
So that cost of the tariffs often trickles down to us.
That's a key point. Yeah.
The consumers.
Absolutely.
If a company has to pay more to import, I don't know, the components for your laptop,
Yeah.
guess who ends up covering that?
You got it.
Right. It gets passed along.
Yep.
And this proposal came at a time when inflation was already a hot topic. People were already feeling the pinch. And then the idea of tariffs adding to that, I can imagine it wasn't met with open arms.
Not by everyone, no. The timing wasn't great.
What do you think about that? Was this proposal a good idea in the face of rising inflation?
Well, there are a lot of opinions about that.
Okay.
But there were some arguments in favor of the External Revenue Service. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of supporters viewed it as a way to level the playing field in international trade.
Interesting.
They argued that some countries weren't contributing fairly.
Okay.
And this would bring in much needed revenue for things like infrastructure,
Right.
healthcare, even education.
Sure.
Plus, the idea of possibly easing the reliance on income tax resonated with some.
Yeah, it's almost like a balancing act.
Yeah.
Potentially higher prices versus more government revenue and maybe even lower income taxes down the line.
Right.
There's a lot to consider.
There is a lot of different factors at play.
But then there's the logistical puzzle.
Yeah.
We already have systems in place for collecting tariffs.
That's right.
Would creating a whole new agency actually be more efficient?
Good question.
How would it mesh with what's already there?
Right.
And would it truly lead to savings?
Yeah. Would it actually save Americans money?
Or just add another layer of bureaucracy?
Exactly.
So many questions. Really makes you think.
It does. I mean, we're talking about potentially changing how a massive part of our economy functions.
We are.
And those changes could have huge consequences.
Huge.
What about the businesses?
Especially smaller ones.
Would they be able to handle the increased cost from tariffs?
Yeah. Would they need to raise their prices or cut back on staff?
Or, in a worst-case scenario, even shut down?
Possibly.
And let's not forget the possibility of triggering a trade war.
Oh, yeah.
If other countries retaliate with their own tariffs, things could escalate rapidly,
Very quickly.
impacting global trade.
Absolutely.
This is clearly a multifaceted issue.
Uh-huh.
But let's make it personal for a second.
Okay.
How might all of this affect someone's individual finances?
Well, first and foremost, keeping a close eye on your budget becomes even more crucial.
Okay.
Even slight price increases add up,
Sure.
especially for essential things like groceries and gas.
Right.
Yeah, it really highlights the importance of smart spending habits.
You know, understanding where your money goes and identifying areas where you can cut back if needed.
Becomes even more critical in this kind of scenario, prioritizing those essential expenses.
Right.
Yeah.
So being financially savvy and adaptable is more important than ever. You need to make sure you're living within your means and have some wiggle room in your budget
Right.
to absorb any potential price hikes.
Exactly. It's also wise to think about alternatives.
Okay.
Diversify your spending.
Okay.
If certain products become more expensive because of tariffs, maybe you look for similar items from different countries or even explore locally sourced options.
It's like that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Spreading out your spending could help mitigate some of the risk.
Precisely, knowledge is power.
Sure.
especially when it comes to your finances.
Yeah.
The more you understand about policies like this and how they could impact you, the better prepared you'll be to make sound decisions.
It sounds like being proactive is key. Don't just wait and see what happens.
Right.
But actively engage with the information and adjust accordingly.
You could stay informed about any policy changes.
Okay.
Pay attention to how they might affect your personal finances.
Yeah.
And don't hesitate to adjust your spending habits if needed.
That's great advice. This whole discussion reminds me of the debates about protectionism versus free trade.
Yeah.
This External Revenue Service, with its focus on tariffs, seems to lean towards a protectionist approach.
You're spot on.
Right.
Yeah, the idea behind protectionism is to shield domestic industries from foreign competition,
Right.
often by making imports more expensive.
Like we've been discussing with tariffs.
Exact.
But wouldn't that also mean higher prices for consumers?
Yeah.
And what about those businesses that rely on importing goods? It seems like there are two sides to this coin.
There are. Protectionism can have both positive and negative consequences.
Okay.
It might help protect jobs in certain industries, potentially boost domestic production.
Okay, but as we've discussed, it could also lead to those increased prices for consumers.
Right.
Fewer choices, and even the risk of retaliatory tariffs from other countries. Potentially sparking a trade war.
Exactly. It's a complicated issue.
Yeah, it sounds like there's no easy answer.
No, there isn't.
So let's imagine for a moment that the External Revenue Service did become a reality.
Okay.
What might that look like in practice?
Well, we'd likely be looking at a whole new bureaucratic structure.
Okay.
We'd need to establish the agency itself,
Right.
hire personnel, develop procedures, and figure out how to integrate it with existing systems.
Sounds like a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
Not to mention the potential cost involved.
It would be a significant endeavor for sure. And with any big change like this, there's always the risk of unintended consequences.
Sure.
Yeah, it's hard to predict exactly how something like this would ripple through the economy.
It raises another important point.
Yeah.
Even if this External Revenue Service was successful in collecting revenue from tariffs, how would that money be used?
Right. That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Proponents argued that this revenue could be used to fund various government programs,
No.
potentially even reducing the need for income taxes. Think of it as a potential new source of funding for things like infrastructure improvements, expanding healthcare access, or investing in education.
Sounds promising, but is there any guarantee that would actually happen?
Well, no.
I mean, government budgets are complex
They are.
and subject to all sorts of political pressures.
You're right. There's no ironclad guarantee. It's impossible to say with certainty that the revenue from tariffs would be allocated to specific programs or used to directly offset other taxes.
So there's a lot of potential, but also a lot of unknowns.
Right.
Potential risks. It's like stepping into uncharted territory.
It highlights the importance of open and honest discussions about these kinds of policy proposals. We need to carefully weigh the potential impacts, both the good and the bad, before making any drastic changes.
I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners.
Yeah.
We're all in this together, and it's crucial that we have a shared understanding of the issues at hand.
Absolutely. We all want what's best for ourselves,
Yeah.
our families, and our communities.
And speaking of making informed decisions, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some practical steps listeners can take to protect their finances in light of all this.
That's a great idea. We've talked a lot about the potential impact of tariffs on prices.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some strategies for managing those potential increases.
What's the first line of defense?
Staying informed is key.
Okay.
Keep up with the news and analysis
Sure.
related to tariffs and trade policy. Understanding the latest developments can help you anticipate those potential price changes and make smarter choices.
So knowledge is power, but what about budgeting? Is that more important than ever in this kind of environment?
Absolutely. Having a clear understanding of your income and expenses is crucial.
Okay.
Track your spending.
Yeah.
Identify areas where you can potentially cut back if needed, and prioritize essential items.
So it's all about being mindful
Yeah.
and adaptable. Make sure you're not living beyond your means and that you have some flexibility in your budget
Right.
to absorb potential price increases.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to explore those alternative options we talked about earlier.
Okay.
If certain goods become more expensive because of tariffs, look for similar products from different countries or explore what's available locally.
Don't be afraid to shop around and compare prices.
Exactly.
You might be surprised by what you find.
You might, and remember the power of negotiation.
Oh, yeah?
If you're a small business owner, for example, don't be shy about talking to your suppliers about pricing. You might be able to negotiate better terms or find alternative sourcing options.
It's about being proactive.
Yes.
And resourceful thinking outside the box.
You gotta, even small changes can make a big difference over time.
Yeah.
Cutting back on unnecessary expenses, finding those better deals, and being mindful of your consumption habits can help you weather any potential economic storms.
So much great advice. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a few key takeaways.
Okay, let's distill all this down to some actionable insights.
First and foremost, understanding policies like this proposed external revenue service is absolutely crucial for making informed financial decisions. We've seen how tariffs can potentially impact prices and ripple through the entire economy.
That's right. It's not just about knowing what's happening. It's about grasping how those events might affect your personal finances.
Right.
That's where the real power lies.
Secondly, it's crucial to remember that complex issues like trade policy always have multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
There are strong arguments on both sides of that protectionism versus free trade debate. It's up to each individual to weigh the evidence and form their own opinion.
Absolutely.
And finally, remember to be proactive and adaptable. Stay informed, manage your finances wisely, and explore your options. Don't just sit back and wait for things to happen.
Right.
Take control of your financial well-being.
I love it. Those are some powerful words to live by.
Yeah, it's remarkable how a concept like a tariff can have such far-reaching effects.
It really is.
We've talked about the potential impacts on prices, businesses, and even the complexities of global trade. That's a lot to consider.
It truly highlights the interconnectedness of the world's economies. What might seem like a small policy shift in one country can trigger a chain reaction across the globe.
Right.
It's like a domino effect,
Yeah.
setting off a series of consequences that can be hard to predict.
It really underscores the importance of being informed and engaged citizens. We can't just sit back and passively observe these developments
Right.
without understanding how they might affect us.
Absolutely. We need to stay informed, ask critical questions, and make our voices heard. That's how we ensure that policies are shaped with the best interests of everyone in mind.
I love that make our voices heard.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that we have a say in shaping our future. So let's empower ourselves with knowledge and understanding. Let's learn about these issues, discuss them with others, and participate in the process.
Well said. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by complex policy debates, but it's crucial to remember that we all have a role to play in creating a better future.
And sometimes taking action can be as simple as starting a conversation.
Yeah.
Talk to your friends, family, colleagues. Share what you've learned today about the External Revenue Service tariffs and their potential impact on our lives.
It's amazing how much we can learn from each other when we engage in open and honest dialogue. We might not always agree, but that's okay. Different perspectives enrich the conversation and help us see things from new angles.
And those conversations can spark new ideas, potential solutions, and a deeper collective understanding of these complex issues.
For sure.
So let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
Let's keep learning, questioning, and working towards a brighter future.
That's a perfect note to end on. Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about the world around us, the better equipped we are to make a positive difference.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for joining us on this exploration. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Yeah.
And if you're eager to dive deeper into more fascinating topics like this one, don't forget to subscribe.
We've got a lot more explorations planned, and we'd love for you to join us.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those questions coming. Thanks for listening.